Today's podcast is sponsored by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens. Listen, folks, there is strength in numbers. Join today at amac.us/Carter. I don't always like saying we have a big show or this is going to be... I mean, we had a situation over the weekend where people at a synagogue here in Texas almost lost their lives. Almost lost their lives. It was horrifying. You know, I had some of my best friends over at the house this weekend as the events were unfolding. I had talked to them. They're Jewish. I mean, it was literally terrifying to think about what could happen, what could have happened to these people at the synagogue. We're going to be talking about that today with my very special guest and friend, good friend, Liora Rez. She is with the nonprofit StopAntiSemitism.org. And boy, does she have a story to tell you. I mean, there is a strange connection actually between her and the woman that this terrorist, this Muslim terrorist, was trying with the hope of like maybe holding these hostages, trying to get free from a Texas prison. And we're going to explain that. Her name is Afia Siddiqui. They called her Lady Al-Qaeda. And I was actually in Afghanistan. I'll go into that a little bit in 2008 when she was taken into custody. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. This with Liora Rez of StopAntiSemitism.org. And by the way, you know, let's just talk about what the rabbi went through. We're going to bring that up as well. His training, how he survived, how he was able to save the lives of the other parishioners that were being held hostage in his synagogue. So we're going to talk a little bit about that too. Please follow and subscribe. Get all your links at sarahacarter.com. That is sarahacarter.com. Don't forget the A. While you are there, I'd like you to sign up for our email list so that you don't get shadow banned, folks. That's what's been going on. We know what's been happening in social media, and it is a very serious situation when you're in the United States of America and you're worried about being banned or censored. We will not allow that to happen. We will make sure that you get the stories you need straight to your inbox without any censoring whatsoever, but only if you go to sarahacarter.com and sign up for the email list. Let's start out with My Pillow. I don't want to forget Mike Lindell, a great American, a truly good friend of mine who has an amazing company. And because I believe in supporting real patriots, I am grateful and excited to tell you about his new product, the new My Slippers, right? The new My Slippers. Mike Lindell created this great product. I have it at home. I bought some for my daughter. Now you can get 40% off on his new My Slippers. And I'm telling you, you are going to love them. They spent 2 years developing these slippers to ensure the highest quality and comfort. They're designed for all-day wear, indoors or outdoors. They're available in moccasin or slip-on style with a variety of colors and sizes, made with quality leather suede and the exclusive 3-tier cushioning system. For a limited time only, Mike is offering 40% off on his new My Slippers. Go to MyPillow.com and click on Radio Listener Square. You go to MyPillow.com, click on the Radio Listener Square, enter the promo code CARTER, C-A-R-T-E-R, or call 1-800-685-7221. While you're there, take advantage of the deep discounts on all My Pillow products, including the Giza Dream bed sheets, the My Pillow mattress topper, and the My Pillow towel sets. You can also save 40% off on the new My Slippers with promo code CARTER. Call 1-800-685-7221 or visit mypillow.com. Guys, this Saturday, there was a hostage situation that I think kind of kept our nation riveted on whatever news channel you watch. If you didn't see it, it was a very stressful situation when a terrorist, and I can use that title now without any worry whatsoever, by the name of Malik Faisal Akram. He was a British citizen. He held the synagogue in Colleyville, Texas, basically hostage on a live stream feed. I can't even imagine how horrified the parishioners must have felt. But we've seen too much of this in the United States. We've seen this at synagogues, where synagogues have been under direct attack of anti-Semites, those who hate Jews. We've seen it also in Christian churches, as though not as much as we've seen happening in the synagogues, where people have gone into places of worship where people are vulnerable. Think about it. Where they're vulnerable, where you're focused on prayer, where you're focused on God, where you're focused on family. And you would never in a million years believe, wow, somebody could come into my synagogue, somebody could take me and my family and end our lives inside a house of worship. We don't even think that. And unfortunately, we live in a time where we really have to be thinking about that. This rabbi, his name is Charlie Citron Walker, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. His name is Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker, said that he and two other of the hostages, after some of the congregation had gotten out, and remember this is being live streamed, they were terrified. This was an 11 to 12 hour ordeal. They were in the last hour of the standoff on Saturday night. The suspect was becoming more and more agitated, more irate. They believed at that time that this terrorist was a direct threat to them, that they would actually lose their life. Now, he spoke to CBS this morning, and what he said was that he had told the other hostages to go. The hostages were ready to run. The group was not far from the exit inside the synagogue. He said, I told them to go. I threw a chair at the gunman, and I headed for the door. And all three of us were able to get out without even a shot being fired. He said he was able to do this because he had actually gone through training. He had actually gone through specialized training. Of course, you know, with so many different synagogues being targeted of attacks where people have actually lost their lives. We saw that in Pennsylvania. We saw that in California. We've seen it in other places, unfortunately, throughout our country and throughout the world. He put himself through training. I can't even begin to tell you how important that is. You know, active shooter training. I know it sounds, you know, like why would I want to do that? That would maybe more than likely never happen to me. It can. Especially if you're, you know, the pastor of a church, a rabbi, if you're a teacher, if you're somebody who is in a vulnerable situation, even if, for example, if you work at a liquor store or you're in a grocery store, a place where you have very few exits, where somebody could come in and somebody could take you hostage. I actually went through training. I'm sure it's very similar to what the rabbi went through. As a journalist, I did this training, war zone training, very intense. The first time I spent 1 week actually training. The people who trained me were former SAS, Special Forces from Great Britain. I was trained in, bombs, emergency medical, and I was also trained in hostage taking. So what would happen to me if I was taken hostage in Afghanistan, for example, or in Iraq, for example, when I worked overseas as a journalist? And it's a pretty frightening prospect to think like I could be in my hotel room, that somebody could be watching me, that they could come in, or that they could capture me when I'm out in the field on assignment. What do I need to watch out for? What do I need to look for? What happens if somebody does take me hostage? What happens if somebody points a weapon at me? How are you going to react? How are you and your family going to react in a situation like that? How are your children going to react? How are you going to react? And that is a very real question, because it can mean the difference between life and death. We don't want to think about these things happening, but we've seen too often what has happened in our schools, what has happened with active gunmen, what has happened during hostage taking. Well, look what happened in September 11th. That was just, right? Everybody was used to this idea, well, if I just do what the perpetrators say, if the hostages just behave and follow the directions, of the person taking them hostage, then everything's going to be okay. And we found out that that doesn't work. September 11th, Everybody did whatever they were supposed to do, and they were flown into the World Trade Centers. Finally, the people on board the last flight in Pennsylvania, the one that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, was only because the people on board said, we will not allow these terrorists to use this airplane as a weapon. And they were already aware that the other airplanes had gone into the towers, had gone into the Pentagon, and they were willing to take action themselves. So what happens inside a synagogue? When I did the training, actually, it's kind of an interesting story. My husband, I always talk about Marty. Marty, former Delta Force, worked in the Middle East. So he retired out of Delta, but continued to work in the Middle East, continued to work for the Pentagon and others. And my husband would always tell me, listen, babe, if you're out there, if you're on the front lines and you think something's going to happen, you think somebody's going to try to take you, you need to get away as quickly as possible. You cannot allow somebody to move you from point A to point B, because more than likely, once they've moved you, you are not going to get out of that situation. They are going to own you. So you got to not only be aware of your surroundings, be aware of where you need to go, how you need to get out, but you need to do everything possible to get away from the people that are trying to take you hostage. You need to scream and run, right? We teach our kids. Someone tries to come up to you, someone tries to take, scream and run, scream and run, scream and run. Well, I was in training. It was the second time I was with I'm not going to name the group that I was training with because I don't want them to be any more upset with me. But so we were in a situation where we were like in a mock village in, somewhere in Iraq. ISIS had taken us basically, so what it is we don't really realize we're going to be taken hostage at any point in time. These people who are former SAS, special operators, dress and act as terrorists. They bag our heads. They throw us down on the ground. They are going to take us hostage. We're now victims, really, because we're literally at their mercy. It's a pretty scary situation, even though we know, this is kind of a mock situation. It isn't real. It still is intense. Your heart races. You're trying to figure out like, oh my gosh, I wasn't expecting this. What am I going to do now? Well, I just kept hearing my husband say, scream and run. And they had a bag over my head. We were on the ground. They had taken off our shoes. So, that's probably what would happen in real life. And they had us lay down, and I could hear the men walking, and these were pretty big guys, walking around, tying up other hostages behind me. And I kept thinking, okay, what do I do? And I was really scared because I couldn't tell where they were at. So all of a sudden, I just had to get the courage and do what I had been trained to do, right? And I immediately pulled the bag off my head, and I just started to run. And I ran, and I could hear a man behind me. I didn't even turn to look at him. I was in this mock village in a giant warehouse, and he was chasing me. I was turning corners. I was going through this maze, and I just was in such, I think a rush. So much adrenaline surging through my body. I just ran, I think the fastest I ever ran in my life. I could hear him breathing behind me. I could hear his footsteps, but I wouldn't turn around, and I just kept going. And in fact, I kept going that I ran out of the training area. It was in the warehouse. I ran out of the warehouse, and I just kept running down through the parking lot. I just kept going. Literally the man was like, you can stop now, you can stop. I was just going. I was just going to keep on going. I probably ran to the McDonald's. No, I didn't. But I did turn around. They were not happy. I thought I was like, wow, these guys are going to be like, holy smokes, she wins. She didn't let the terrorists take her. They actually were not that happy with me. My husband said it's because I kind of knocked him down a couple of notches, that they said I was the only one that ever did that. But I admit that the reason I did that was because in Afghanistan, or in Iraq in particular, and at the time I went to Iraq one time when I had to deal with Islamic State. This was in 2015. I was there before, when we're dealing with Al Qaeda and all the other groups during the war, but with Islamic State one time. And I always thought to myself, and this is a real honest assessment, if I'm ever captured, I don't know what I'll do, but I would want them to kill me before they captured me, because I had seen so much what had happened to fellow journalists, that were being used on television by these terrorists for propaganda purposes, and the horrific nature of what they did to them and how they tortured them and then how they killed them publicly was something that it's a terrifying feeling to know that that could happen to you and that that has happened. So, I mean, when I saw this rabbi speak and when he talked about, the lessons learned and being trained and what it would require, and I saw that he just said, you know what? This guy's going to kill us. This guy's going to kill us. If we don't take action right now, we are going to become victims, and I am not going to allow that to happen. And to, hear Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker tell this story about how he used whatever weapon he had. He threw the chair at him and he said, go. And he got, the rest of his congregation out. I mean, is a pretty awesome story. And, I know all of us out there are thinking, this can never happen to us. This will never happen to us. But after Saturday, what Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker did was show us that if you just take a little bit of time, right? Learn what you need to do to protect yourself and your family, to do the best that you can do to protect yourself and your family in a situation like this. Not only can you save the lives of others, you can save your own life, right? In a situation like this. And I think that's the lesson that the rabbi taught all of us. Today I have Liora Rez. I haven't had her on the show in a while. I love Liora. She's amazing. She's the executive director at stopantisemitism.org. And she is somebody that has really, truly been fighting the fight to not only educate people in our country about anti-Semitism, but has really shined a light globally on this issue of hate and how we as a nation can protect ourselves, protect our brothers and sisters from this type of terrorism and this type of hate. And without any further delay, here's Liora Rez. So happy to have you back on, Liora. It's been too long.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. I'm thrilled.
I know. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. I'm sorry to have you back under these circumstances, but I think there's no one better to discuss the issue of, anti-Semitism and terrorism other than you, considering, thank God that the synagogue, nobody was killed. But it must have been amen. Really, amen. But it must have been, and it was, according to all accounts, a horrifying experience for everybody in the congregation.
100%. Everyone in the congregation, everybody in the town, the state, the country. As soon as I heard this Saturday early afternoon, I heard gunman, hostage, synagogue. We received information from our analysts, and my heart just instantaneously dropped. I thought to myself, it's Saturday, it's Shabbat.
Right.
Here we go.
Right. And the congregation of Beth Israel in Colleyville, Texas, probably never expected to be in a situation like they were in. But we've seen more and more, Liora, these incidents at synagogues and the Jewish people being targeted, even here in the United States. And what I think was really fascinating is how the rabbi talked about how they went through training, because they were always concerned that something like what had happened in Pennsylvania, what had happened in California, what we've seen happen across the country would happen to them one day. And he actually said that it was that training that saved him and
Thank
saved
God.
The congregation.
Absolutely. Thank God he was proactive in receiving this security training. Thank God it was as successful as it is. It's so crucial that every congregation, regardless of denomination, have some type of security training, because these situations, a lot of us are in denial that it'll never happen here. They absolutely can, and heaven forbid, possibly might.
Gosh, I certainly hope not. I talked about it at the top of the show. I talked about how as a journalist, I went through training. There's active shooter training, which I think is vitally important for people to know about, especially if you feel, or no, even if you don't feel, if it just makes you feel better to be trained in a situation where there could be an active gunman. How do I react? What do I do? How do I save my life? When I was in Afghanistan and working in the war zone, and I talked about this at the top of the podcast. I mean, I went through several different training, week-long training, then a 3-day training process of what happens if I'm taken hostage. What happens if I'm in an active shooter situation? What happens if, God forbid, I, roll over an IED in a vehicle? How do I help someone else in an emergency situation? How do I save my own life? But does it kind of just stun you that we're living here? It's 2022, right? And that we are still living in a time with so much hate that we're worried about our children just going to synagogue. We're worried about our children just going to church. Stop antisemitism.org. I mean, you're out there, doing your best to draw attention to, I think, what is a growing problem in our nation with hate, but also overseas.
Correct. It's not only to the point where we're worried when our kids go to school, heaven forbid, if there's an active shooter. We also worry when we're at Shabbat services. For years now, the second I walk into my synagogue, which by the way, I want to add, unless I know that the synagogue is either armed or there's active security presence, I will physically not step into that building, specifically when I have my child with me. But the first thing I always do is I subconsciously identify the exits, and I will never, never sit near a window. And the fact that in 2022, I'm thinking like this is honestly so heartbreaking. It's
It is.
so heartbreaking because, I mean, when you go to church, do you see policemen guarding the door? Do you identify exits? Do you identify windows and keep your children, to the right of you if the window is to the left of you? It's it's so unfathomable to me that the Jewish population in America and around the world, actually, it's angering, it's heartbreaking, it's saddening that we have to deal with this in our houses of worship.
Do you feel as though there is also this element of, like, I don't know, if it's been politicized, if there have been people that are utilizing, this, instead of being honest about anti-Semitism, honest about the realities of terrorism, honest about this, they kind of utilize it for political purposes. I'm going to play a
100%. Since the day that I founded this org, we have been on a mission, and our overall statement to everybody has been: you cannot politicize anti-Semitism. The second you politicize Jew hatred, you are hurting the Jewish people. I mean, within minutes of the breaking news that a synagogue hostage situation was unfolding, we saw press, numerous outlets jump right on the white supremacist bandwagon, and whether it's to further their agenda, their political views, we're not sure. But you're doing nothing but endangering the Jewish people and the victims in this by jumping to the conclusion that only one group of people could be
right.
responsible for this type of hatred, when it's simply not true. We see over and over again anti-Semitism stemming from radical African American organizations like the Black Hebrew Israelites, from the Nation of Islam, from Islamists like this jihadi terrorist who was neutralized by Colleyville police on Saturday. And it's
Mhm.
for reporters and community leaders just to prematurely make statements about who's responsible. They're not helping, they're hurting, and it needs to stop.
I want to give our listeners an example of what happened. For those of you who don't watch MSNBC or other outlets, I want you to take a listen to this. This is an MSNBC report when the synagogue was under attack and the rabbi and the 3 others were being held hostage. Listen to this.
We do know this is an ongoing hostage situation the White House is monitoring as well. This has been elevated to a federal level. As you watch this thing unfold, what are your biggest concerns?
Well, my biggest concern, hearing that it's at a synagogue, is that this is someone who's intent on committing hate crimes and an act of domestic terrorism. And it's not just a random person who wandered into a synagogue. Now, we don't know that for certain, but we have seen an incredible rise in rhetoric that is anti-Semitic being trafficked all around the country. And in the case of Michigan, that is why I established the first hate crimes and domestic terrorism unit anywhere in the state, one of the first in the country, because we were seeing an exponential rise in hate crimes and an exponential rise in the formation and the membership of these extremist organizations, many of which are white supremacy organizations, and they traffic in hatred against Jews and other minorities.
Look, I don't take that away from that there are white supremacists out there, but this was she was jumping the gun. And I've never seen that kind of reaction when it even comes to just, look, I think equal is equal in hate, right? Whether it's the Black Hebrew Israelites, whether it's a white supremacist, whether it's a Nazi organization in anywhere in the world, I think it is all the same. And also when it comes to terrorism and the hate that emanates from these radical extremist Islamist terrorist organizations and Iran. But we don't see the same treatment. I have seen StopAntisemitism.org get smacked down by social media before I've seen the Iranian government get taken off or get warnings from the social media empire. And I feel like everyone's politicizing and jumping the gun here, and we're not looking at the reality of what is happening in our country and in our world, in particular when it comes to terrorism. We're like throwing a blind eye.
Correct. I'm the first to say that we do have an exponential rise of anti-Semitism and hatred on the right. Mm-hmm. And it's something that we constantly keep an eye out on, we constantly expose, and we constantly create consequences for people that espouse this type of hatred. Just this morning on our social media channels, we had published a video of a young white male holding a semi-automatic rifle stating he wants to shoot up a synagogue and he hates Jews and use an anti-Black slur. This in no way should be treated differently if it was a Black man or an Arabic man holding the same rifle, espousing the same type of hatred.
Right.
The problem that we're seeing a lot of the times is the people who want to or think they're allies, whether subconsciously or not, they're hurting versus helping when they're completely ignoring and turning a blind eye to other sources of anti-Semitism, such as this terrorist from Saturday, who was hell bent on what was his goal? His goal was to free a jihadi terrorist, this woman Siddiqui, from a Texas prison.
Lady Al Qaeda. Lady Al
Qaeda. Now, if we take a look at who she is, this woman was sentenced to how many years? Was it 86 years in prison?
That's right. 86 years. It's pretty much life. She is not getting out. She is not going to get out. She's going to kill U.S. soldiers.
She's going to die. Yeah. Right. She's going to die in prison. Now, if we take a look at who she is, she's a jihadi, Al Qaeda operative, terrorist. She's jailed in the United States, like you said, for pretty much the rest of her life. Now, when we take a step further, so we have a gunman in Texas that is defending her and rallying for her release. Let's take a step further. Who else has rallied for the release of this jailed woman? Linda Sarsour.
Right.
We have CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations, is it? We have the American Muslims for Palestine. And both of these groups are known to have ties to terror, yet have nonprofit status in America for taxation purposes.
And supported by congressional members. And supported by congressional members.
Correct.
And have been photographed with congressional members and have led marches in the United States.
Yes. Yes. So I don't know if, for instance, for CARE, I mean, do they just have botched leadership and they're masquerading as a civil rights org. We have to examine when a man who takes Jews hostage in a synagogue on Shabbat, when he has the same outrageous goal and call for freedom as a civil rights org, somebody has to say something. Also, this man supposedly arrived in America 2 weeks ago. He's a British national. How did he
Right.
get here? Why was he not being watched? Where did he get his gun?
Right. Right. I want you to take a listen to this. This is the FBI, and then we're going to go into more detail because I teased everyone at the top of the show. There is Afia Siddiqui, Lady Al Qaeda. You have a weird kind of like you intersected with her in your life in a very bizarre and
Insane.
strange way.
Absolutely insane.
And I was in Afghanistan when she was captured. I was in Kabul. It's a very strange story, and I want everyone to know about that. But I want to play this clip. This is the FBI when this took place. And this is the reason why, Liora, I absolutely believe, thank God for that rabbi, but we are failing on multiple levels in our bureaucracy, particularly on our ability, like you said, how did this guy get in here? Wasn't he being watched? What is going on? Why isn't anyone pointing out the fact that CARE and all these other groups, Linda Sarsour in particular, they're walking around full of hate, espousing this hate. And I'm almost wondering if they're connected to, to other groups and people that we need to be concerned about. Listen to this right here.
We do believe from our engagement with this subject that he was singularly focused on one issue, and it was not specifically related to the Jewish community, but we're continuing to work to find motive, and we will continue on that path. In terms of the resolution of the incident, the hostage taker is deceased.
Not related to the Jewish community. He did not go into a Catholic church. He did not go into the Baptist community church. He went into a Jewish synagogue.
Sarah, it takes a lot for my jaw to open, but when I heard that press conference and him speaking, my mouth was wide open. The Dallas-Fort Worth area has 7.6 million people. Less than 1% are Jewish. Also, let's add to the fact that a live stream was happening because we are still in the middle of a pandemic. A lot of people, especially, older constituents don't feel comfortable attending services in person, yada, yada, yada. They had a live stream going on Facebook until the social media platform cut the feed. And on the feed, he was specifically heard ranting about Jews, ranting about Israel and Palestine. He didn't bring up Iran. He didn't bring up Russia. He didn't bring up Catholics. He didn't bring up Buddhists. He literally brought up the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, and the conflict that we have halfway around the globe while he's standing in a synagogue with a loaded weapon, holding a rabbi and constituents hostage. And for an FBI spokesman to come out and say that so quickly, that no, it's not a target on the Jewish community. It's unfathomable.
Why do you think they're doing that, Liora? Look, I have my own ideas, and it's been happening for quite a while. It's almost as if we're not allowed to say anything. You could talk about the white supremacists. You could talk about the Nazis, and I'm not taking that away. There are those people out there that are following that type of indoctrination full of hate, and we've got to call them out, and we've got to hold them accountable. And if they commit a crime, we've got to put them away, right? I agree. But why is it so difficult for our government to stand up to Iran and Iran's leadership when it comes to anti-Semitism, to extremist organizations, Muslim organizations, to just call a spade, to just say it? Why are they having such a hard time with this?
Law enforcement heard the same feed that I did.
Right.
And you clearly can hear there was a British accent of some type. There was a secondary language in addition to English. So I'm not sure if the knee-jerk reaction was to not admit that this wasn't the typical neo-Nazi alt-right source of anti-Semitism, and they didn't want to panic anybody. But you know what? Instead of saying something incorrect in such a horrific situation, don't say anything.
Right.
And also, the press picked up on it within 0.25 seconds, and you have headlines everywhere popping up saying, no, it's not targeted at the Jewish community. This is a situation not targeted at Jews, yada, yada, yada. Thankfully, late last night, they reissued another statement clarifying
Right.
that, yes, it is absolutely targeted toward the Jewish community. And the Joint Terrorism Force is now investigating. So what I want to know is, where are those press outlets that quickly jumped to say, no, 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 this isn't anti-Semitic in nature, and this was not intent focused on just the Jewish people. Where's their edits to this?
Right.
And it's
Why not?
nowhere.
It's not anywhere. And it's because there is, there's been an established kind of, I think it's an established sort of narrative that the media has taken in an effort to, I think they believe that they're actually mitigating some sort of obvious symptom of anti-Semitism. They're trying to play down the hate, maybe with the hopes that they're not going to be a part of it. But they make excuses. They continuously make excuses just because I have friends that are Muslim, and they will come right out and say, you know what? That person is an Islamist. They hate Jews.
100%. 100%.
They hate Jews. They're not afraid of saying it. They're not afraid of calling a spade a spade. They're not afraid of saying the truth. Now, you had an interesting experience, and I want to, talk about this because I think it's kind of interesting in life how things come full circle, or how, things affect us in certain ways. But you actually were in school with Afia Siddiqui when she was actually studying here, right?
This has to be one of the most bizarre, if not the most bizarre situation of my life. So when I was a little girl, I didn't want to grow up and be a advocate for the Jewish people. I actually wanted to be a doctor. And specifically, I always had an interest in neuroscience and neurosurgery. And one of the top programs in the country was at Brandeis University in Waltham, Massachusetts, just right outside of Boston. And I have a bachelor's in neuroscience. And one of the lab rotations that I had, I believe it was either 99 or 2000, 2001, somewhere around that, was in one of the neuro labs. And when I was an undergraduate student, she was a grad student doing her doctorate in neuro. And I specifically remember walking, passing her like everybody else, and just always getting this creepy, I can't describe it any better. I was creeped out. Always, and I have to tell you, I mean, there's science geeks, pretty nice, quiet people in those labs. I always got along with everyone. Everyone was very welcoming, and collaborations were key across the labs and things like that. And I just always had the weirdest feeling whenever I passed this woman or saw this woman. And I have to tell you, from a physical stature, she's rather petite. I'm on the taller side. So it's not a physicality thing. And I just remember she always had this very black, long, striking hair. I don't know. I was just, for some reason, extremely, extremely wary and intimidated by her. And you can't explain it.
Well, it's interesting because I remember being in Afghanistan when she was captured, and I knew somebody there at the time. It was in 2008, and I actually know somebody who was part of that operation to take her in, and they described her as very, very dangerous. I don't want to go into details of what they told me, for not sure if any of that's been public or not, but they were very, very concerned. She was very, very dangerous. She was intent on taking lives. She was a chemical expert. And a little bit of her background, she was daughter of an English trained Pakistani doctor. She also attended MIT, which is so bizarre, huh, when we think about it, because she was trained here. She lived here among all of us, among Americans and the West and the Jewish community. But she was filled with a hate to destroy us. So not only and I think that for a lot of folks, I mean, we can try to put on rose-colored glasses, right? But there are people out there in the world, and terrorists that are still out there in the world. It is not over. They are still intent on conducting attacks in the United States, on conducting attacks in synagogues, on conducting attacks against Americans, wherever, whatever you preach, whatever you believe, whatever color of skin you have, it doesn't matter. There are still people out there that have an enormous amount of hate and are willing to do anything and everything. Like we saw, even with the Madrid train bombings, or the attacks in England, or the attacks in France. Remember, at Charlie Hebdo and at the Jewish grocery store and along the streets. And I think, for a lot of us, we don't want to believe that that's even possible. And you see this woman, she's petite, she's, long dark hair, young, she's in school with you. You would have never known, right?
No.
Passing her in the hallway.
And I have to tell you, right, so you spoke of her father. He's a very well-known neurosurgeon, which would explain, her concentration maybe of going into neuro. But she has, if I'm not mistaken, a brother who everyone first thought was this Texas synagogue hostage taker. He's an architect in Houston, Texas, accomplished man. If I'm not mistaken, her other sibling, a sister, is either a neuroscientist or, again, some type of medical field neuro-centered worker. So she comes from a very educated, well-to-do family,
Right.
studying in two of the most prestigious universities in America, and ends up as a global jihadi terrorist sitting in prison for 86 years.
Well, and she was sitting in prison because she actually had notes. Well, they knew she was involved with putting together chemicals and talking about targeted attacks and wanting to target U.S. soldiers overseas, U.S. troops overseas. But apparently the federal officials also found notes that she had put together on the construction of dirty bombs.
Correct.
She was 36 years old. I want people to think about this. Here's this woman, unsuspecting woman for most people, right? Although I'm sure I absolutely agree with you. I've had those same feelings with people before. When you meet them, it's a kind of an overwhelming feeling that they're a predator and that there's something wrong. Your body just
Something's
gets
off. Yep,
your body
something
gets
is
the
off.
EBGBs. Your body's warning you to stay away from this person. But think about this for all of you out there who are listening to Liora and I right now. I mean, here's a woman who was literally putting notes together to construct dirty bombs to bring them into the United States, possibly, or in Europe, or wherever the Al Qaeda was planning on targeting, and killing tens of thousands of people, or possibly millions. We don't even know.
Right.
And there are more of her. She is not the only Siddiqui, right? She is not the only Lady Al Qaeda. This is what concerns me. And when the government is so rash to just kind of brush things over or play politics, or even when we have people in the news or people who are experts supposedly coming out and assessing things without having all the facts. This is what I think you were saying, Liora, in the beginning. How did we miss this? Well, we missed this because we presume to know things before even having the facts laid out before us.
Correct. And I think she is a prime example of how frightening this can be. Again, from a very well-to-do, educated family, siblings, educated. She's a mother of young kids. When she was arrested, she had a boy and a girl who were 8 and 10.
Right.
I mean, imagine how much hatred you have to be willing to die for the cause and leave your two young children without a mother, while having an education from MIT at Brandeis University in America. I mean, this is unfathomable.
Right. And what's really weird is that connection here to the U.S. I was just pulling up a story right now on NBC News, and it says, John Floyd, who was the board chair for CARE in Houston, and a longtime legal counsel for Siddiqui's brother, said in a statement that the sibling is not responsible for the situation, is not near Dallas-Fort Worth, and that the hostage taker had nothing to do with Siddiqui. I mean, it's so strange that we have groups in the United States that should be putting America and their citizens first, right? This is our group. But they're representing her, they're They're fighting for her release. They're representing her brother. They're, the deputy director of CARES National, Edward Ahmed Mitchell, he condemned the hostage taking. He did say he condemned the hostage taking Saturday as anti-Semitic and unacceptable act of evil. So I'm going to give him that.
Yes.
But
I want to add something.
Yeah, go ahead.
The co-founder and head of CARE, Nihad Awad, blocked us on every possible social media channel.
Right.
Instead of, the least you can do, take down your ridiculous promotions of her.
Right.
Cover your tracks. Nope. They don't care if the hatred's out there. Maybe he doesn't. Hair under him is botched. He needs to go.
Right.
Whether they need to rebrand, whether they need to be, they just need to be, shut down, get their 501c3 statute removed, reorganized. But as they are now, you cannot masquerade as a civil rights organization while promoting global jihadi terrorists in America.
Right. You can't do it. And for all of you out there who we keep saying CARE, it's the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. They were after September 11th an unindicted co-conspirator, correct?
Correct. In the Holy Land Foundation trial. Absolutely. And good luck finding paperwork on them because everything is sealed pretty much.
Right.
And I have to tell you, they have CARE, that is, has direct lines to Congress. Let's think about that. An organization,
on both sides, by the way, on both sides.
Yes, on both sides.
Both Republicans and Democrats.
Correct. I'm so glad you said that. With the Republicans and the Democrats.
It's crazy.
So, this is absolutely crazy. They literally, it's unfathomable to me. It's unfathomable and it's shocking and something needs to be done. Maybe this is the baby step that's going to cause a review of them.
I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. Before I let you go, Liora, and I hope you come back on the show. I think you need to come back. I think we need to have you on the show every month or bring you back off and on and to talk about these subjects because I think one, we're not getting enough information out there. I want everybody to go to stopantisemitism.org. It doesn't matter. You don't need to be Jewish. You don't have to be Jewish. Go there, support your Jewish brothers and sisters who are out there who are being targeted, and speak out against hate. And also, it's a way of being informed, right? I just don't think we're getting the right information. And if we rely on the FBI, on this White House, even on our congressional members or even in the media, we're just going to be left out in the dark. We're going to be caught off guard every time, caught by surprise, and wonder, how did this happen to our country?
Right. Sarah, it's always such a pleasure chatting with you. I hope next time it's under better circumstances.
Yeah, me too. Me too, Liora. I really, my heart goes out to the rabbi. By the way, the rabbi was amazing. I said it at the top of the show. You got to be impressed. You got to be impressed. He really saved lives. He was able to see that the hostage taker, that this terrorist was losing it and that he was going to kill someone.
Yeah,
they didn't run.
A lot of people are not talking about the fact that it was going into, I think, 11, 12 hours.
Right.
2 young little girls at home and a wife.
Pretty scary.
Wow. You want to talk about a hero? And wow, God bless him. God bless him is all I have to say. Thank God everything turned out okay for him and the other hostages. And
it's a lesson learned. It's a lesson learned for everyone. It can't be any more frightening than what he went through. And he, because of the great training that he had, realized I got to act right now or we're all going to lose our lives. And he did the right thing and he was able to get everybody out. And, I guess, Liora, that's a lesson for all of us. None of us are immune to what could possibly happen. And we should really heed the warning of what just happened right there and realize that, it could be any one of us next time
heaven forbid.
around.
Yes. And again, thank God everything turned out okay.
Well, thank you, Liora. Thank you for being on the show. I hope you come back real soon.
Absolutely.
It's always a great having you on board, folks. Again, Liora Rez. Where can they go to get all the information that they need, Liora? Where can our listeners go to help support your group to get all the latest information on what's happening?
Yeah, absolutely. Like you had mentioned, our website, stopantisemitism.org. Our handle on Twitter is @stopantisemites. We're also on Instagram, stop_antisemitism, and Facebook, Stop Antisemitism. And again, I'd like to reiterate what you say. You do not have to be Jewish to work with us and join our cause and submit anti-Semitic incidents. A lot of our strongest allies and supporters, thankfully, are from the Christian and Muslim communities, and we couldn't be more thankful for them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I want everybody to know we're breaking barriers here at the Sarah Carter Show, and we're telling the truth, and we're not afraid to treat everyone as equals. We're not playing politics here. Thanks again, Liora.
Amen. Thanks, Sarah.
Amen. Folks, the stock market is volatile, and the current administration looks to increase your taxes, pander to China, and mislead you about inflation. That's far worse than a few mean tweets. So in honor of better financial times, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, Universal Coin and Bullion is offering a 1-ounce pure silver tribute coin featuring America's 45th president, Donald J. Trump, at their cost. You'll get a pure 1-ounce silver coin honoring former President Trump at the same price Universal Coin buys it from their vendors. Throughout history, silver and gold have been a hedge against inflation and a guaranteed asset you can turn to when times are uncertain. And with Biden and Harris in office, the uncertainty seems to be getting worse, not better. Diversify your portfolio and add pure silver Trump coin to your investments now. And the postage is, guess what? It's free. Call Universal Coin at 1-800-UCB-GOLD. That's 1-800-UCB-GOLD. Their professional staff, led by America's gold expert, Dr. Mike Fulgens, are waiting for you to call at 1-800-UCB-GOLD to get your pure silver President Trump tribute coin at dealer's cost. Guys, it's been a great show. Thank you again, Liora Rez, for being a part of the Sarah Carter Show. Folks, go to stopantisemitism.org. That's stopantisemitism.org. And don't forget to go to sarahacarter.com. And while you are there, download the podcast. Go to the podcast, download the podcast, The Sarah Carter Show, and write your reviews. I read them. I listen to what you have to say. Remember, this is about all of us. It's not just about me. It's about you and me. It's about our nation. It's about doing what's best and ensuring that we still have the liberty and freedom for our children in the future. God bless you. God bless this great nation. And God bless the people at the synagogue in Colleyville, Texas. Today, I'm joined by Rebecca Weber, the CEO of the Association for Mature American Citizens. It's also known as AMAC. The most important question, I think, for so many people out there is, how much does AMAC membership cost? What does it cost the regular consumer?
Yeah, so for $16 a year, okay, or less, you can join at a 1, 3, or 5-year membership. You get a couple of things. You get the benefits. You get a great subscription to a magazine. So for $16, you're going to receive a bi-monthly magazine. But your voice is now going to be heard in Washington. We take our marching orders from you. If you stand for faith, family, freedom, if you believe in the Constitution, if you believe in the greatness of America, if you believe in individual freedoms and everything you just said, Sarah, $16 is not a lot of money to join the 2.3 million members that are really fighting hard to ensure that America remains the best country in the world.
Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today. I'm honored to have you and AMAC as a sponsor for the Sarah Carter Show. You know, for more information, folks, visit amac.us/Carter.